Good morning. We have in front of us a page from chapter 182 in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. So it's just a double-sided page there. And it's the second half of that chapter. The chapter title I'm looking at on the screen is Laws Governing Beverage in a Cup Used for Grace, and that cup not be impaired. Impaired is how they translate the word pogum, which we describe as not fresh. So we're looking at the second half of this chapter. Right? The first half of the chapter describes the two opinions as to whether or not you have to have a cup of wine when you bench, right? Which we discussed the existence of those two opinions. That's not the subject of our learning, so we're not going to focus on that, going through the different opinions. But the second half is beginning with halacha 4, halacha daled, which you have there on your page, is the laws of Pogum. So it's chapter 182 and Kuf Pei Beis, and chapter 182 is actually about the laws of benching. Now it's here, though meaning it's located here in the laws of benching, although it's applicable to both Kiddush, Havdalah, right? Because the point here is this idea of Pogum is universal for all koshel bracha. Anytime you hold a cup of wine over which you're going to recite some other blessing other than the Hagafen, which is thanking Hashem for the drinking of the wine. So which means if you're holding the cup of wine for a wedding, for a bris, for benching, for Kiddush, for Havdalah, anytime you're holding a cup of wine for the sake of a blessing of some sort, it's called koshel bracha. So this law that it should not be pogum, it should not be what they call impaired, we'll just stick with the word pogum. The laws of pogum apply, as we learned in the Gemara in Psachim yesterday, right? That once you taste something, it makes it pogum. We had those different opinions, whether you should be concerned with making a whole barrel pogum or just a pitcher, right? Or a small barrel, a bigger barrel, right? So we're going to learn about the practical halachas of all of that. So because the first time in the Shulchan Aruch, in the structure of how the Shulchan Aruch is built, the first time the laws of koshel bracha come up is in benching, then that's why it's here, although the laws apply to Kiddush and apply to Havdalah and apply to every other time you're using koshel bracha. But it happens to be in the laws of benching here. Yeah? Okay, so let's begin. We clear so far? We know where we are? Just the geography of where we are. So Dalet, I'm going to read it in Hebrew, but you can follow along with the English. Koshel bracha, a cup over which a blessing is recited, a blessing other than the Hagafen, other than thanking Hashem for drinking the wine, some other blessing, some other kedusha, some other holy mitzvah type blessing is being recited while you have that wine with you. So anytime you have that, right, which means to begin with, you're introducing this wine because you want to give that mitzvah a greater honor, right? You're holding a cup of wine. So tzarech shelo yehi pogum. We must make sure that it's not pogum, to translate as impaired. The way we explained it yesterday is that it's not, we have to make sure it's fresh. Pogum would be the opposite of fresh. Yeah, so the footnote, there goes, footnote 19 tells you to look up psachim, tells you to look up our Gemara. I have the footnotes on my screen, sorry. No. Footnote 19 just says, Psachim 106a, which is our Gemara we learned yesterday. The source for this idea that it has to be pogum. Correct? Our Gemara. Namely, Shim Shasim Menu, if you drank from that cup, Pagamai, you've made it pogum. It's no longer a fresh cup of wine, because you drank a little bit from it. Now, even if you didn't bring the cup all the way to your lips. You lifted it and you poured it into your mouth, but you didn't touch the actual, your lips didn't touch the actual cup. Nonetheless, it's still pogum, because it's no longer fresh. The point is, you drank from it. But if you took from the cup of wine and you poured some into your hand, or you poured it into a different cup and then v'shasa you drank, no problem. So this gets to yesterday. We were talking about making Kiddush, and you want to give your wife to drink from your Kiddush, and you want to give her the extra value that she's not drinking from a cup that's pogum. So you pour first into her cup. So it's not pogum for her. And now we just learned it's not pogum for you either, because it only becomes pogum when you drink directly from the cup, even if your lips didn't touch the cup.
That's an interesting point.
But it only becomes pogum when you drink directly from it. So if I poured it into her cup, my cup isn't pogum.
That's because of the laws of Zayah?
Doesn't say anything like that. I think it has to do with the.
Because if you're pouring it
without
the lip touching,
it's still pogum. That's right.
Hand or to a cup, it's actually physically the exact same thing.
That's correct.
Right.
I
thought the idea was, again, it removed the whole idea of contamination.
So here in the sources, they tell us to look up the Tosfos on our Gemara. So we can look at it quickly. Let's just see if there's any insights. Ooh, it's a nice long Tosfos.
But it's funny, a lot of times when you were doing Kiddush over wine or over mashka in Kiddush room, when there's a lot of guys there, so you emptied your cup.
And I basically gave everybody first. That's the reason.
Yeah, but a couple of times there wasn't enough, so you poured some into the cup and then you poured it first.
After. Yeah.
So it's.
No, it wasn't.
I'm scanning for this Tosfos and I don't see it. Oh, it's different Tosfos.
If you have enough for yourself, actually,
Pour, I have to pour more.
because you need the
You
reviews.
did this. I poured from a fresh bottle
Back
into the cup
into your cup.
without having
Have
touched
to
it.
do
Okay, we'll get to that in a second. We'll get to that in a second. We'll get to those details in a second. It's all coming up now.
That's an issue.
Here we are talking about. Here we go. Okay, Tosfos derives from the way the Gemara is set up. Actually, from our whole discussion about Rav Ashi yesterday. Good morning. From our whole discussion about Rav Ashi yesterday, about how to understand Rav Ashi, is he arguing or not? Tosfos derives from that discussion that if you pour it into your hands and then drink from it, it's not pogum. I didn't look through the whole Tosfos, but that's what it seems like, just from cursory reading. Okay, so that's the basic of pogum. You drink from the cup of wine, it's considered pogum. If you don't, it's not pogum, even though you've taken out of it, you poured it into a different cup. And I think the logic here is, although you're saying, physically speaking, whether I poured it into another cup or I poured it into my mouth, it's the same thing. I think the point here is, maybe it's kind of like, what's my relationship with the cup? Is this a fresh cup or not? Maybe that's just a way of thinking about it. If I drank from it, even if I didn't put my lips to it, I drank directly from it, it's no longer a fresh cup of wine that I'm giving the prestige to the mitzvah.
Right.
If I poured it into someone else's cup, it's still a fresh cup of wine that I'm offering myself, even if I pour it out of it into someone else's cup. I'm just imagining that might be the logic, right? Maybe.
It's fresh to the receiver.
Exactly. So if I poured it into my lips, into my mouth, even if I didn't touch it, it's still not fresh for me anymore. It's an interesting halacha. Yeah.
It's really interesting because if you touch your lips, the whole point was that you contaminated
right.
wine by having.
So again, this contamination thing is
it's misleading.
It's a misnomer.
Right.
Which is why maybe they translate it as impaired. Which is an interesting translation also, impaired.
Because seriously,
non-fresh, I think is the right way. Pogum is non-fresh.
Because your mouth is a vessel the same way if nothing touches it.
Right.
What's the difference?
Right.
Pour it into anywhere.
Right. So the difference in my relationship with it. Is it a fresh cup of wine for me or not? I poured it into my mouth, it's no longer a fresh cup of wine for me. Even if my lips didn't touch the cup. That's right. But if I poured it into a different cup of wine and then drank another cup of wine, then the first cup of wine is still fresh for me. I didn't drink from it yet.
It's not new.
Yeah. Not fresh, something like that.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rabbi.
Yeah.
Before I forget, do you mind if we dedicate the steward to my uncle who's in the hospital in New York?
Oh, sorry to hear that. What's his name?
Tzion.
Tzion Ben?
Ben, the dad or the mom?
Mother.
Mother, Tzion Ben Mazal.
Tzion Ben Mazal, she were full shlema, complete and full recovery. And an easy one. Okay, so second paragraph now, halach of Dalet. Vahu, and this is all true, where you only pour out a little bit from your cup into your mouth. I'm sorry. You poured out, if you poured it into your mouth, it's pogum. If you poured it into someone else's cup, it's not pogum. Your cup is not pogum when you pour it into someone else's cup. Only if you poured out a little bit, so that in your original cup, we can still consider it full. Okay? Revius. Right? So this gets to the other opinions mentioned yesterday, Rav Ashi, and then the other opinions about whether there's a revius left behind or not. This has to do with pouring someone else's cup, as we'll see. Or if after, not revius. The cup itself can still be considered full. In other words, if I took a full, it's overflowing, and I poured out a little bit like that to someone else's cup. The observer looks at this cup and says, "Oh, it's still full," even though a little bit poured out. Okay, that's one option. Or another option is where I poured out that much. Now, when I poured out, let's say half the cup, this is a larger cup, right? So I poured out half the cup. Looking at this, no one's going to say it's full. But then if I took this content and I put it into a smaller cup, now it's a full cup. Right, but the cup looks full, right? Right,
But you're allowed to pour it into a small cup that it'll be full.
The new cup is full now.
Right, so you're measuring against a certain quantity then.
Relative to the cup, whether it's a revius or more. So at least a revius, but this is probably 3 revius, right? So I poured into a cup that's a revius and a half.
It's not measured against that, it's measured against a standard quantity.
No, but if I left it in here, if I left it in here, well, let's
I'm just saying that you're as long as you have, you pour, that cup is no longer
is now Pogum.
right, because it doesn't
It doesn't appear to feel full anymore. That's right.
But you take it in
And I pour the rest of the content into a revius size or a little bit more, whatever it is, and then that cup looks full.
Right.
Now it's good,
That's,
right?
Thank God it's like a half the-
See, interesting. One second. Let's finish. Let's get all the pictures before we make thing, right? So if I pour it out of my cup and I poured it into another cup, so it's not Pogum because I didn't drink from it. That's only if I poured out a little bit, so that the original cup still can be described as full. Or I took the rest of the content of this larger cup and poured it into a smaller cup, and this new cup is now full. Or in this cup of wine, which is half now, because I poured out half of it, I threw into it ezedov or something like bia yayin to raise the wine. She had kais mole, and now the cup is full. So I threw in an big ice cube, so now it's full. The cup doesn't have to be full of wine per se. He died with revius, so long as I have a revius. But it shouldn't appear to be empty. So now we're having another element of, it all comes down to the cup being a fresh cup of wine. So if my cup of wine, I emptied out half of it in someone else's cup, I can no longer look at it and say, oh, I have a fresh cup of wine for my kiddush. I don't, because I just poured half of it. But if the cup still looks full when I shared it, I can still say I'm drinking a fresh cup of wine. So now when you're pouring for your wife, when you're pouring from your wife kiddush, you can't pour out half the cup because now you're looking at your cup. You're not drinking a fresh cup of wine for kiddush. If you pour out a little bit,
even though the quantity could possibly be a
revius, the quantity is more than a revius. But if you poured out half the cup of wine, it doesn't look like you're drinking a fresh cup of wine for your kiddush.
But it is, but it's the same wine before. It's essentially
so again, it comes down to this point that Pogum is not defilement. It's what's your relationship with the cup here? Are you drinking a fresh cup of wine for your kiddush? And if half of it you just poured out, you can't describe that as a fresh, nice cup of wine for your kiddush because you poured out half of it already. So now 2 things can make your kiddush Pogum. 2 things now. Either you drank from it directly, even if it's full, because you drank of it, it's no longer fresh, or you poured out so much that it no longer looks full, and that's not a fresh cup of wine for your kiddush because half of it's gone.
Does Pogum apply before or after the bracha? After you made the bracha, now you're pouring it. You've already,
good question.
You made your kiddush already.
Yeah.
Now it's Pogum because
doesn't
you
look
poured
full
it
anymore. That's
how
crazy.
do you when does it apply? That's
Both.
Oh.
Both. Seemingly.
We have to always keep that cup.
That's right.
Full status.
Correct. So you pour a little bit for your wife to drink from, not so much that your cup becomes half empty, and now it doesn't look like you're drinking a fresh cup of wine. You're drinking leftovers now.
Now you're giving out a whole bunch of people to the table.
Okay, so then for that, you drink them after. Again, remember we said yesterday, you don't have to drink from the wine to fulfill kiddush.
Right.
They said, they already fulfilled their obligation. You don't have to do anything. The rest of it's all just nice, right? But there's another solution in a minute, actually, to that. Yeah.
What happens if you have this cup full?
Yeah.
Right?
This larger
You
cup,
have
yeah.
20 guys around,
That's what you're just asking.
and you look a little bit. Can you refill it?
So by the time it gets to you, it's now Pogum because it's right.
Could you refill it?
Okay, we'll see in a second. You could refill it. But let's put a pin in that. We're going to come back to that. I want to finish this because there's details here and then when we get to the laws of Kiddush, it'll be filled up. But still, your answer will be question and similar to your question.
Just to summarize for a second, that's my understanding. Pogum doesn't mean necessarily that you can.
No.
Just by virtue of the fact that the cup is full enough.
Correct. Because
even though you make Kiddush.
yes, correct.
You
Pogum,
haven't
that's
drank
right.
anything.
You're not giving it a due. The point of Pogum is the point is you're making Kiddush on you're giving the Kiddush or the Havdalah, whatever it is, the special honor of having a fresh, full cup of wine.
Right. So
And if you undermine the freshness or the fullness of it, it's now Pogum.
So all you have to do, theoretically, and we're repeating, is take the same amount that you have, which is the reveal, pour it into a new cup.
Smaller cup.
Now you have a full cup.
And now you're good to go.
The status of the wine is identical. Nothing's happened to
But the
it.
cup is different now. So your relationship with the being a fresh cup is now different. Beforehand, there was a leftover cup, and now it's a fresh cup. When I have a full cup of wine, I pour out half of it. The observance of my drinking, the appearance of my drinking is such that I'm drinking leftovers. But when the cup is full, I'm not drinking leftovers. I'm drinking a full cup.
Complete Kiddush. I mean,
That's a Kiddush.
Okay, and that's interesting because if you have a big cup, which is I have a Kiddush cup that's much more than 3.5.
Of course.
Right.
So
So when I give, and it doesn't look full, I can easily take that and put it into a smaller cup.
that's right.
There and then.
That's right.
You know how bizarre that's going to look?
Yeah.
Just
So
if I ever
there's a
did
simpler
that,
solution. Let's
I
see.
never have done that. because
Okay,
I
let's see in a
never
second.
had less than what I
Let's see in a second.
thought.
okay.
So weird.
What if you pour it into a cup that somebody's always drank?
That's weird.
If you we'll see in a second. Not a problem. Let's see. Again, it's not a contamination issue. It's a question of does it look like you're
But it
drinking a
looks
fresh
like-
cup? So let's see a second. Okay, now let's continue reading. This is also back from our Gemara yesterday. Vafilu shasa mahakad. Even if you drank from the pitcher, by machavis, or from the jug, shel cheres, that's made of earthenware, shiktana, that's smaller, so equivalent to our bottles, right? Nifkam kol hayayin shebehem. All the wine in that bottle is now no longer fresh. It's pogum.
Yeah, if you drank, let's say, from the bottle,
From the wine bottle.
that's it. You can't.
That's correct. As it says here, footnote 21, citing to Psachim, in contemporary terms, if one drinks directly from a bottle, the entire contents of the bottle becomes impaired. That becomes pogum. This is what we described yesterday, those people who were concerned with drinking from a fresh bottle. But again, it only means if you drank directly from it. Pouring it into a cup doesn't make the rest of the bottle unfresh. So there's a bit of a switcheroo here, a little bit, in that when it comes to a cup, pouring to a different cup could make it pogum. When it comes to a bottle, only drinking directly from it will make it pogum. Because again, it's like the appearance of a fresh cup of wine. If you take a bottle of wine and you swig directly from the cup of the bottle, when someone looks at that, it's like that's not a fresh cup of wine for Kiddush. It's leftovers. But if you have a bottle of wine, you pour a little bit into everybody's cup, and then you fill your own cup up, no one's gonna look at that and say it's not a fresh cup of wine. It is a fresh cup of wine.
That's my question. How is diluting it still considered fresh cup?
Diluting it what?
You're not
Add
gonna
ice.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, because now the cup looks full. Because the cup looks full now. If I added ice to a half a cup of wine, the cup looks full and it has the observance of a fresh cup of
As
wine.
long as it still has a reduced wine.
As long as it does it revius, right? Or in theory, you could also put a clean stone in there. Anything that's just going to raise the volume
Right.
that makes the cup look full. Yeah.
But it's interesting with the wine, if you pour out the wine, it's not fucking, but if you drank from the
From a bottle.
bottle.
Yes. Well, again, it makes sense though.
That's
But it
easy.
doesn't though.
Because you're sitting around a table,
This is absolutely
when
not
you're sitting around a table,
whatsoever.
and 1 second, you're sitting around a table and you fill up a
It
cup
just
of,
looks disgusting
well, it's-
when you open take a bottle. That's
right.
all. There's
That's
no
what makes it
real
funny.
meat in the.
But
No, it's not.
it doesn't just make it.
That's not what makes
1
it
second.
fun. No.
1 second.
No,
It-
it's
it's-
the emptiness of the bottle.
No, he's right.
The
Let's just
appearance.
look at the appearance of this. I take a bottle of wine and there's 5 people around a table and I fill everybody a cup. I'm the last to fill up my cup. The appearance of that is such that my cup is not a fresh cup of wine? Of course it is.
Of course.
But before I drank from everybody and before I gave everybody their cup of wine,
It's a
I took a swig from the
disgusting-
wine.
it's a disgusting thing to do.
Everybody looks at that and says, that is not a fresh cup of wine you're giving
That's
me.
not what they're saying. They're saying you're a disgusting person drinking.
Correct.
fresh
And therefore the wine you're pouring me is not
Right,
fresh
Only because your lips touch the wine.
because you drank from it. Yeah.
That's the only.
We're making the
reason.
same
Nobody cares about the plugging business.
But that's what pogum
They're
is.
looking at-
But that's what pogum is. That's what pogum is. Are you giving the cup of kiddush its proper honor? And in this case, you're not, because you just drank from the bottle before. Right? So you're giving it like this
Now,
leftover
what happens if
wine.
I took a Coke bottle
Anyway,
and
we're not-
wrapped it and gave you? You wouldn't drink it either.
Correct.
But that's not because it's Pogum, it's because it's gross.
That is Pogum.
That's Pogum.
That is Pogum. You're describing it
You're
directly.
pouring
Maybe
the
it's
wine.
both.
You're describing it
Maybe it's
aptly,
both.
yes.
It's
What about
it-
pouring
it's-
from one,
yeah.
sorry, what about pouring from one person then to the next person? You've already, what's the word, contaminated, or not, sorry.
Impaired? The bottle?
No, you're pouring for person one, your wife, or.
The bottle from your cup or to a bottle?
From your cup.
No. Why would it be
Then-
Pogum?
Because you have to fill yours at the end, right?
As long as you left with the full, as long as your cup looks full.
Right,
If you-
transfer it to the
Let's say
small
by person number 3, it's starting to look.
That's what we're talking
So that's
about.
what we're talking about. Put into a smaller cup. Okay. Let's wait for. Let's wait for the laws of Kiddush. It'll come up, but you'll see maybe a solution. Let's keep on going. Okay. If a person drank directly from a barrel, a wood barrel, shigadola, which is much bigger. So it's not the kind of barrel you would have on the table. It's the kind of barrel you have in your basement.
Yeah.
A little
Strange.
disgusting.
Well,
When the guy's drinking directly from the thing. Sorry?
Drinking it from the thing, you have a spout.
Yeah, but the guy's drinking directly from the spout.
Yeah.
So it's kind of disgusting. So there are then ein lahakbid. You don't have to be concerned with Pogum because it's so large that his disgusting behavior doesn't make the entire wine consider leftovers.
I prove. That's my point exactly.
It's all about the appearance. Right.
So that's what we're.
That's right. It's all about the appearance. A guy drinks directly from the pitcher. If we wipe off the spout and then we fill up, a guy drinks directly from the barrel and we wipe off the spout. So once it is disgusting, but we sanitize the spout because we wiped it up.
That's it, it's gone.
Hold on a second. We wiped it up and then we fill up the rest of the cups of wine directly from that pitcher.
It's not a problem.
Everybody still looks at that cup and says it's a fresh cup. If you take a bottle of wine, you drink from the bottle, wipe off the top, everybody on the table is still saying that ain't fresh. That isn't nice. And that's why there's a difference.
Two other points. Let's say, first of all, the bottle would probably usually you would do it publicly, but you don't have a barrel like at your table. It's a barrel.
That's
So
also, yeah.
Second, maybe it's like the kosher thing, like a chad b'shishim or whatever.
I don't know if that comes up here. Maybe.
No, it doesn't apply here.
Anyway, yesh machmirin. There are those who are particular that even if someone drank directly from the big barrel, not to use the rest for kiddush.
There you
And
go.
that's as per yesterday's Gemara, where there was at least one person there who said, "I'm concerned with even fresh barrels." Right? And in the first instance, if you can be scrupulous about this too, that one should not let people drink directly from the spout of the large barrels. That's just good common sense not to do that.
But you could remedy it, right, by adding something.
We're gonna get there. Sorry, halacha hey. It's good. Halacha hey. Second halacha. Kois pogum. A cup that's pogum. Yechalim lataknai can be easily rectified. Thank you. By adding just a little bit of wine to the cup. Why? Right? Why? Ikra pogum. The primary issue of pogum, because you drank from it. It's not fresh anymore. And if when you go ahead and refill it, add some more wine, you've now rectified it because now you've poured again in honor of the kiddush. So it's not a major deal. So it's at the kiddush table, okay, at the Shabbos lunch downstairs here. So you can't find the wine around or whatever, not so much wine or whatever it is, and someone's leftover kiddush. So if you just take that and drink from it, you're drinking someone's leftovers. But then if you add wine and refill the cup, so you wouldn't because of your own concerns with germs.
Because of the shtick of that guy who drank from it.
But you've now poured but in front of you is a fresh cup of wine that you provided for your kiddush because you added some. That's the point. So you've removed the pogum issue. It's your own cup even.
Or
It's your own
say
cup.
You didn't even know. Somebody else filled it up after. You wouldn't. It looks full. So it looks like a fresh cup.
Something like that. Yeah. So or it could be your own.
But what's the difference if I'm pouring this, I take a sip of it, I can't do kiddush over it anymore, right? Or I can't do the brook over it.
Right. But now you add
So
wine.
what's the difference between this and I add wine?
So now you can. Because by adding wine, you've made it into a new fresh cup for kiddush.
Even if I drank it.
Even though you drank from it before. Adding it, now it's like a new activity. Here gives an example.
But
But-
you've already
But now it's a new cup by adding some wine.
contaminated wine.
There's no contamination issue here.
I think there's two things that get.
Contamination issue is not the issue.
Contamination.
Okay, that's your preference, but the contamination issue is not the issue.
Amen.
The issue is whether
Looks full or not.
you've prepared for yourself a fresh cup of wine. and by adding wine to the bottle you did, to the cup you did. Right? The example he gives here is kamoy pegimas hamizbeach, like when the mizbeach is in the temple is impaired, it becomes rectified just by filling it up. You don't have to like destroy the whole mizbeach and build a new one. So it's missing a little bit. You add it, now you fixed it. So your cup is missing something because you've taken from it. Now you add to it. It's done.
So getting back to my other question, that when there's 20 people around,
Yeah.
right?
Here's your question.
Yeah.
Ask your question. Your question is.
Oh,
you
okay. So
force
the issue of
everybody-
kiddush. Okay, now back to the question of kiddush. So if you have a cup of kiddush, right, and before you drink from it, you give everybody a little bit because you don't want to give them pogum, right? But now, by the time you get to
You're only having
your cup is half full. It's more than a revius, let's say. Can I just refill it and drink from it? It's a good question.
Well, didn't you just say you could do that? with-
One sec. Hold on one second. In that case, I want to wait for the laws of kiddush because I'll tell you why there could be a counter argument. The counter argument might be that the wine you're adding to your cup now is not the wine you made your bracha over. In the case you're describing before, it's before I even made my bracha. I have a half a cup of wine, adding some to make it no pogum, and I'm making kiddush. But so the wine I have in my cup and that I drink at the end is the same wine over which I made the kiddush. But in this case you're describing here, where in between the kiddush and my drinking, I add wine. Maybe that ruined.
My concern.
Maybe the wine that I'm now drinking is not the same wine I drank. So I don't want to
Because it was
make a
saying-
ruling yet. I don't want to make a ruling yet. Let's wait for the laws of kiddush for that. But at least we do know now that if I'm just giving to my wife, I just have to give her a drop and make sure my cup still looks full when I give it to her. That's all.
So ideally,
So far we
you
have
just
that.
have your second little cup that's Rabbi, and you just fill that, and then you pour everybody, and then you drink from that small cup.
That makes sense also. If you have a second cup for yourself,
Yes.
that's a revius.
As long
So that's
as-
or let's say, it's a good, that's an interesting idea. You take from the cup, you take
Your
from
full big
your big
Kiddush
Kaddish
cup.
cup, you pour it into a smaller cup that's a revius, and then you give to the next person the rest of your cup, let them pass it around them full, and you drink your cup from the revius. That's an
Some
interesting
people
idea.
have this thing, this trade thing, where.
Yeah, you
pour
drop
it
it
in,
on top
But isn't
and
that-
all the little
isn't
wine
there an
in
issue
the
of
cup
Pogum
go
there,
forward.
though?
But are
But
those
why
like
do
they
they do
do that?
Sorry?
But that's only after they make kiddush.
So the same thing, the same principle applies. They could do it before they drink, so long as when they take it back, it still observes, looks to be full. Yeah. What did you ask?
No, when you're pouring your full cup for yourself and then passing around another cup.
Yeah.
To give
No,
everyone, isn't
that's
that
what you're-
cup Pogum because it's,
No one drank from it. You poured it into another
no,
cup.
but it doesn't appear to be full.
Okay, that's the question we're discussing. Yeah. That's right. So when you give it to your wife, make sure
You
it's the.
have your non-Pogum cup, but the one you're using now for your guest.
Oh, it's not
That's
Pogum, but it's in
one
their
of
new
the same
cup.
responsibility.
Oh, no, that'll be
That
fine.
cup is not
So if
Pogum.
I have this full massive
Let's
cup
say
of
you have
wine
a
for kiddush,
cup, you
this
pour
full cup of
your-
wine for kiddush, right?
Yeah, yeah.
This is what he's describing here. I make kiddush. Before I drink from it, I pour a revius into a smaller cup.
Full.
Then
And then
that
it's
full
full.
that cup is full. And now this cup is still 90%.
Sure, yeah,
One second. Now this cup is still 70% full. I give it to everybody else.
70%.
I give it to everybody else to pour around into their
And
cups.
it's getting smaller, it's half full.
There's no pogum because in their cups of wine, it's a fresh little drink. And I have a revius here
In their cups.
in their cups. Yeah, there's no problem there.
Their obligation is just say, oh, my, their extra wine is just.
No, I-
Yeah.
So
Okay, let's continue. Let's finish the salah.
You don't have to drink them.
they don't.
Right. No. V'chein likewise. So option A is add some more wine to your cup. V'chein likewise, im hechzer yayin shivakais pogum l'kankan. If I return the content of my pogum cup back to the pitcher, yeah, nizbatel b'soichoi b'roi v'kosher. It's now become absorbed in the majority of wine which is left in the bottle, and it's now okay, which is an interesting point to remember. If you're using the option of pouring the wine back into the bottle to make it not pogum anymore, it's only when
Making what now? Pogum, the bottle?
no,
The
The
wine.
wine. in
unless
your-
someone drank from the bottle is not pogum,
Okay.
right? So I have leftover cup of wine that I want to make kiddush on. It's pogum. So option one was take from the bottle, add. Option B is take this cup, pour it back into the bottle, and then refill it back into my cup. And now I'm pouring a fresh cup of wine. That only works when I poured. If at the moment when I poured the wine from my cup, the leftover, the pogum wine, poured it into the bottle, it's only if there's more wine in the bottle that overpowers the pogum wine that's going in. And then when I pour it back, it's a fresh cup of wine. Right? Nonetheless, ain lasses kai. one shouldn't do that, even though it's an option. Therefore, it's our custom to add a little bit of wine from the pitcher into my cup, and that's how I rectify it. Then I take the cup and I pour it back into the bottle.
It's not pogum. Back in.
That's correct. So to cover all bases, in other words, two options here for how you make it not pogum. Either by pouring it back into the bottle or by pouring a little bit into my cup. So what he's offering here is to do both. Because in the first option, to do both, pour a little bit into my cup. So according to that opinion, it's not pogum anymore. Then I take whatever's here and pour it back into the bottle. And now according to the other option, it's not pogum anymore. And then I refill my cup. Done.
So when it's in your cup to turn it into non-pogum, you need a little wine from the bottle.
And then I pour that all back into the bottle.
Right, but
Why do you have to pour it back into
for the other option, to cover the other option.
cover what's in the bottle?
To cover the other option, which says the way to make it not pogum is by pouring it back into the bottle.
But then in
But
the bottle, you need more.
But there's some counter opinions on that.
Sorry?
There's an counter opinion not to do that. So why not just do what everyone agrees to do? To just pour from the jug into your.
But it seems like second opinion doesn't agree with that.
Doesn't.
Because second opinion says you have to pour it back to make it not pogum, right? That was the other option.
Okay, so it's
It doesn't seem like it's a dispute, but this is, let's see. Okay, let's read the whole thing again. Yeah. We come nonetheless, we don't do that. Therefore, oh, sorry. Okay. It's not because of a dispute, but because of two things. Number one, you add a little bit of wine to your cup in order to make your cup not pogum. Afterwards, you take that rest of that cup and pour it back into the bottle. And then I go back again and pour it out back into the cup for the sake of the new bracha. No, it's all wine. It's no dilution. It's all wine, no dilution.
It's diluted.
What's diluted?
Wine.
It's all wine.
You drank from it.
Why is it diluted though?
Diluted. Well, you dirtied it.
So again, forget dirty. It's a question of pogum. And when I add a little bit of wine to the cup, it's no longer pogum. Done. Because I poured freshly because the wine that I drank from, which was leftovers, is no longer leftovers considering that I added new wine. Okay? Now I take all that wine, pour it back into the bottle. And then I take the bottle and I fill my cup up again now for the sake of the bracha. All wine, not diluted.
When you pour it back into the bottle in this scenario, the bottle still needs to have more wine than you have in your cup?
I don't think so. Because in that case, when I first added to it, it's not pogum anymore. The only reason why I needed more in the bottle was to outweigh the pogum wine. But this is not pogum wine anymore, considering I just added a bit of wine to it. So I pour it back into the bottle. Okay.
And you're only putting it back into the bottle for the sake of making a new bracha?
No, I pour it now into my cup with the intention that this cup is now going to be a kiddush cup, or a Havdalah cup, or a Birchat Hamazon cup.
But if I filled up
right.
from the bottle to the cup and now it's non-pogum anymore, why can't I just do my bracha?
Okay, so here's why. He says, as will be explained in chapter 183, which is the very next chapter after this one. We're looking at 182. So now, you know the footnote there, but in 23 it reads like this. As stated in section 183.4, wine should be poured, quote, fresh from the bottle. Hence, when a person has already drunk from wine in a cup, it is preferable that a small amount of wine be poured from the bottle into the impaired cup, so the cup is no longer pogum. A. B, the wine from the cup should be poured back into the bottle. And then C, the wine should then be poured back into the cup again for the blessing. And that way, first of all, your wine is not pogum. And B, you've done the activity of filling up your cup of wine for the sake of a bracha fresh from a bottle.
It's almost like
it's like a pogum on a pogum.
Respect to.
It's a double pogum.
Double.
type thing.
But it's interesting because before we're talking about appearance, the cup being full, even if it's a smaller cup and this and that. And now the appearance look a bit like are you trying to fool me? You put it back from the bottle, from the glass into the bottle, and then you pour it.
Okay.
You're like huge wine. I get it though. I'm just saying it's
so
the appearance.
The issue here is I'm looking now at the next chapter. The issue is that one of the there's a bunch of different things you have to do with the cup in preparation for making a cup of a bracha. The cup has to be clean.
No nicks.
All that stuff. The cup should be round. A whole bunch of details to the cup. Then you hold it in two hands. All the different things. pick it up with your right, put it into your left, lower it into your right, and hold it up at least tefach. All the details of that are in the next chapter. Now, one of the details there is, in Hebrew, it's chai. That is to say, literally chai means alive. So what does chai mean? Chai means that it's that the wine is diluted, so that's not too strong. So, which means in the old day, when you take your bottle of wine directly from the vat, it's way too strong to drink.
It wasn't 12%.
It's right. So you would add wine and then you would add water and dilute your wine to make it drinkable. Today, we buy our wine already diluted, right? So because of that, there's one opinion that says, therefore, that the way we cover the obligation to do chai, which would have been by adding water and diluting it to drinkability, is to drink it directly from the bottle. And here he translates the Yesh portion of those that say that the word chai, the Lashon Ashkenaz in Yiddish would be fresh from the bottle. That's going directly from the pitcher to your cup, right for the bracha.
But there's a big danger in pouring it back into the wine, and pouring it back into the bottle.
Others say chai means it's a fresh, that it's a full cup. So we do all of them. Sorry, what do you want to say?
There's a big danger if you pour the wine back into the bottle,
Why?
because if the wine gets on the tablecloth, your wife will kill you.
Sorry, quick question.
Yes.
About the like you said, it needs to be round and no nicks and all that for the kiddush cup itself.
Yeah.
You're sitting and you have 15 people over for Shabbat and you're pouring wine into
No, it's just for
their
the person
glasses.
making kiddush.
Their glasses, a regular
Yeah,
glass.
it's just for the person making kiddush. Yeah. Okay, so tomorrow, there's only one more halacha that is on the flip side of the page that I guess we'll learn tomorrow before we get back to the Gemara. Just rectifying the wine by adding a little bit of water or other things and how we do that. Okay, so at least we get a little more clarity, hopefully. Are we more confused or more clear? Hopefully we're more clear now. Sorry? I think the only outstanding issue is by Kiddush. The only outstanding issue by Kiddush. If I pour out of my cup of wine into everybody else's cup, and now my cup is not Pogum, but it's not full, which is another variation of Pogum, but it's not the Pogum by drinking directly from it. Can I add wine to fill up my cup, and in this way make it not Pogum, or can I run into a different issue, which is the wine I'm drinking now is not the same wine I made Kiddush over. That's right. I think that's our only outstanding issue, and we'll have to look up Reish Ayin Beis, chapter 272, which is the big chapter we've been building towards in our Gemara. Right? I keep on referring back to this one chapter that describes all the laws of Kiddush that we keep on bumping into in our Gemara. We're going to go through the whole chapter eventually, but I imagine it's going to be in there.
But if the people around the table have no obligation to drink the wine,
yeah,
and they're out of their profile like after saying amen,
yeah,
then if I took a huge gulp from the glass I did, and then I pass it around, why is it Pogum? There's nothing. Somebody else can do the kiddush on it.
Yeah.
Like my dad, for example, he does kiddush, drinks, and then passes it around.
Yeah. Okay. If you want to have like kosher bracha,
optimal.
Yeah. Because shabacha for every person.
Yeah.
Then everybody do your own kiddush.
Right.
No. So So what the Rebbe would do by Havdalah, when the Rebbe would give out kosher bracha by Havdalah,
he would keep filling his glass.
That's right. But he drank first.
So
he drank first, added some wine, and now it's not Pogum anymore, and would give everybody else, even though it's after he drank.
According to this,
it's not Pogum because he added wine.
We have a question as to whether that wine is wine from the
But he drank already.
So
he drank already.
It's Pogum for him, but not for the other.
No, but it's Pogum for everybody. But as soon as you add wine, it's not Pogum anymore. So we learned. And then you pour to everybody else. So do that for your Kiddush also. I don't see why that's an issue.
Pogum seems to be not only from
we haven't decided
but also from
so again,
cup, right?
the Rebbe would have a cup of wine,
right,
drink from it, refill it. Now it's not Pogum anymore, and the cup looks full because he refilled it, and then he poured to everybody else's cup.
Then why do we have to worry about having a second cup if all you have to do is pour more wine?
After you drink.
Yes.
There was a reason why you wanted your
no. We haven't decided that that's right yet.
Oh, 1 second. I'll tell you why there's a value in giving your wife a little bit of the wine before you drink from it, rather than after you drink of it and you added wine to make it not Pogum. The added value is that you gave her from the wine that you held during Kiddush and not new wine. even though the new wine's not Pogum anymore. Which will get back to our first outstanding issue.
I don't think
Right?
I don't think we decided that it's not Pogum.
It isn't Pogum. You added wine.
Tomorrow we're going to discuss whether you can pour wine again from enough, because the wine that you made Kiddush on is sitting in the cup, not in the bottle.
Okay, so
But wine is
okay.
before
So again,
Kiddush.
that's our outstanding issue here is whether the wine in the bottle being added constitutes part of the wine upon which you make Kiddush. But everybody agrees that when you add wine to your cup, it's not Pogum anymore.
Ah.
That's clear from today's halacha. It's not an outstanding issue for us anymore. Adding wine to your cup makes it no longer Pogum. Settled. Right? The question is whether or not that's considered wine upon which I make Kiddush. And I'm telling you, when Rebbe would give out wine from his cup as kosher bracha, it was wine that was added after. Right? And yet it was still considered kosher bracha. Okay, look, coming from Rebbe's cup is special, regardless of whether the halacha of kosher bracha applies. But it's still interesting to think about.
But they all answered Omin already.
That's right. When you went to Rebbe to get kosher bracha, it wasn't because you were looking to fulfill your obligation of Havdalah.
Right.
You fulfilled your obligation. Rebbe would make Havdalah, everybody would say Amen, and the obligation is done. It was to get a bless. It was to drink from the Rebbe's cup of wine from which he made the bracha over, right? But it was called kosher bracha because he was pouring out of the cup from which he made Havdalah earlier. But that wine wasn't in his cup during Havdalah time. It was wine added after, which means it's not Pogum. But is the Havdalah extended over that wine which was added after? Sorry,
You're drinking it for a different reason. You did your Havdalah, you said Amen, and then you're drinking just because it's from the Rebbe.
right? But it was called kosher bracha, so that's the question. Does halachically speaking, did the Rebbe's Havdalah extend to that wine that was added after? That's our outstanding issue right now, right?
Rebbe probably extends to the wine and
Yeah.
the whole.
Actually, but what's interesting though about the Rebbe's kosher bracha is that sometimes went for hours, and the Rebbe didn't do his grace after meal, his grace after the cup of wine he drank, until hours later,
You're supposed to do it after X number of minutes.
right? So I haven't observed the entire thing, but it would seem to me if you look, no, it's not the case because there are times that would
What you would mention.
no, no, it wouldn't bench in between, but because he's standing at the table, never left, and he's continuing the activity of his meal, i.e., engaging with the wine, it's still the same meal. And sometimes you even notice, so there were two lines. So everyone was standing between two tables, and everyone would make Havdalah over one of them, facing the crowd, and then a line would walk this way, and then a line would walk behind him also. So he would turn to the other line and keep on pouring that way, and then turn back to this line. Often, if you look closely, you could see that when Rebbe was pouring to the people behind him, he would keep his left hand on the table, like his left hand still pressing on the table upon which he made Havdalah, which is behind him. And I wonder if that's to like keep him connected to the table upon which he drank the wine while he's facing the other way. Now, and the reason why I'm saying it's not so sure is that there are times when Rebbe puts his cup down and claps to the crowd, and he puts his cup down. But in that case, Rebbe's putting his cup down back on the table from which he drank, and he's not necessarily facing his back to it. So that maybe would mean that he hasn't left the table. It's only when he turns around, maybe he left the table, which is why he keeps his hand there. But you have to observe the entire time to see if what I'm saying is correct. But it's definitely an observable fact. You can see quite often whenever his back is facing the table upon which he made Havdalah, but his hand is like twisted like this, and he's resting his hand on that table. And I wonder if it's connected to the halacha of making sure he's still linked to that table so they can bench later. I'm wondering. I don't know. There's something to observe. Okay, so God willing, we'll finish this chapter. We'll finish these halachas tomorrow, and then go back to the Gemara. And the Gemara is going to take us to the beginning of the story of Kiddush, which is where does Kiddush come from? We've been talking about all these laws of Kiddush and Havdalah. Where does it come from? And it's a bit origin. Where does the halacha come from? From the verses and how we derive it from the verses that we're going to get to B'ez Hashem tomorrow. A wonderful day,
Thank you.
and your Uncle Shavar Refuah Shlema Kreva, speedily and easy recovery.